Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Surah Al-Baqarah, Chapter 2, and we will cover verses 188 to 195. Some guidance outlined for fighting. These are the references. Again, the excerpts in this presentation are taken from Volume 3, The Meanings of the Quran. And this is our contact. A recap of verses 183 to 187. Verse 183 begins by addressing the Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen, that is, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, asking them to observe the program of Siyam, which is commonly translated as fasting. But in the presentation, you may have noticed that it is far more than just fasting in order to become muttaqeen. So Quran, wherever it gives a command, it also tells us that why that command is given and what will be the benefits of it and what will be its outcome. Then some details are covered about the procedure and the exceptions to be observed by Mu'mineen within the system of Deen. For example, who can engage in this well-defined program of Siyam with all subclasses worked out for the guidance of all citizens to whom it is applicable. So it is a program. It is not merely keeping away from water and food during the day, but that program has to be applied across the system, and there are some exceptions as well to that. Next, the ideological basis of this program is briefly highlighted by saying that the revelation of the Quran commenced in the month of Ramadan. So it is a program which is spread over 1 month. The aim of the program is succinctly clarified, i.e., to promote the rule of the laws of Allah. And that is a very important point because it is part of the system of Deen. Quran over there says to make the law of Allah supreme, and that land and of course across the world people should come across or know about the laws of Allah as revealed in the Quran so that they can benefit. In the implementation of this program, the importance of having a strong desire and need, which turns into a supplication, is highlighted. And the Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen are reminded about the importance of strengthening Eimaan and remaining firmly on the straight path. And that is another important point which was covered in verse 186, that you should desire and you should go for the system of Deen. And once it is established, then your whole focus should be to work within that system and to make it up to an optimum level as defined in the Quran. Further limits are defined in relation to this program of Siyam, where those retained for any further consultation and implementation should pay full attention to this aspect. Helping to strengthen the system, mankind is addressed. So there is a lot under this program which the system of Deen will have to figure out once the system is in place. The next slide is outline of today's presentation, that is verses 188 to 195. After outlining the boundaries of the program of Siyam, the Quran directs our attention towards another important aspect of the communal setup in society, i.e., do not set up a system in which people deal with each other fraudulently in the matter of their possessions and assets. The court system should be based on a transparent conduct of affairs where injustice should not take place. Next, after referring to the importance of time, we are admonished not to obey superstitious customs in society. These hinder the development of the self and retard human growth. They create unwarranted psychological fear. And we have seen so far that Quran puts extreme emphasis on the development of the human psyche and says that change your inner thought process, the outer world will change in direct proportion to your inner self. The Quran permits the Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen to fight in self-defense and in aid of those who are treated unjustly in the world. In the establishment of the system of Deen, a stage may arrive where Mu'mineen need to defend themselves due to opposition by those who stand up for the man-made systems to defend its evils. The Quran provides guidance on various aspects of this fighting. In fighting, Mu'mineen are told not to transgress the limits laid down by the law of Allah. It is also advised to earmark some months in which there is no fighting, so that peace is maintained in the land and, of course, in the world. Mu'mineen are advised to willingly make available all possible means to support the efforts for Deen. This is part of self-development. Because if this system is for the good of mankind, whatever Mu'mineen spend in terms of their physical side, their intelligence, as well as their resources, that will be towards the betterment of community as a whole. We go to the first verse of today's presentation, verse 188, importance of individual integrity and honesty. وَلَا تَأْكُلُوا أَمْوَالَكُمْ بَيْنَكُمْ بِالْبَاطِلِ وَتُدْلُوا بِهَا إِلَى الْحُكَامِ لِتَأْكُلُوا فَرِيقًا مِّنْ أَمْوَالِ النَّاسِ بِالْإِثْمِ وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. Always keep this reality in front of you that, as has been previously stated, the purpose of the program of Siyam is that such self-restraint becomes created in you so that you can differentiate between what is legitimate and what is illegitimate in every aspect of life. And no matter what the demand may be of your vested interests, you do not even raise your eyes to glance at that which is illegitimate. For example, do not consume the property of each other in an illegitimate way, or if the matter has reached to the courts, then do not do this, that by bribing the court officials, you acquire such a verdict due to which some assets of others are appropriated by you illegally, even though you know what the consequences are of acquiring assets in this way. So the Quran is warning Mu'mineen that since this system is transitioning from the man-made system into the system of Deen, so all those problems which you experienced within the man-made system, those have to be dealt with effectively. The aim of the program of Siyam is to achieve this kind of training of yourself, because it is all about human self-development. If we acquire a moment self, then that as it becomes stronger and stronger, it brings peace in the land wherever these Mu'mineen are residing. The next slide is further elaboration of this verse. The verse confirms one of the challenges of the initial era of the establishment of the system of Deen. Here we are guided about this aspect of misappropriating practices through this instruction, where the Quran enjoins us not to continue the former malpractices of the era of ignorance. The rights of individual property should be respected, and any sale purchase should be legitimate. By mentioning the court system here, the Quran has confirmed that the system of Deen has acquired power in the land, and that the system of justice is under the jurisdiction of the Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen, that is, it has become an Islamic system. By mentioning bribery, we can easily infer that this may be the practice in place under the previous man-made system. Implicit in this command is the direction that the factors contributing to the prevalence of bribery must be addressed. This is part of the functioning of the law of requital. So it should be looked at holistically. It should not be looked at in part, which happens under the man-made system, that once the bribery is rampant, then they have an anti-bribery department as well, and they also start taking bribe, and then the whole system gradually becomes cancerous. Even under man-made systems where the prevailing wages are not adequate to meet the needs of the populace, that which is called bribery takes root. And if it is unchecked, then initially it spreads slowly and later spreads rapidly like a cancer in the body politic of the nation. And we can see examples of this across the world of today in 2026. Bribery does not spread alone. It brings other imbalances with it, and the whole society becomes purely satanic. Because then the crime increases, and then the law and order situation is created, and then gradually it leads to bigger problems. Next slide is some further elaboration of the program of Siyam. After Siyam, the command for fasting, the matter is not just left there. There is something further which is stated, and whatever has been said from this, the restriction of Siyam becomes even clearer in front of us. It is stated that in relation to the matter of eating and drinking, you imposed certain restrictions on yourselves according to our command. When you have become habituated to these restrictions, then hear a command of another restriction. What occurred through fasting? Bread and water used to be present in front of you. You never even looked at them. The same bread and water, when it appeared in front of you after iftar, that is once the fast is broken, then you consumed these without any hesitation. And this is another important point which is noted in this slide, that these things create psychological and physical discipline. It was the same bread and water. How did this differentiation take place? This is because during the day these were prohibited, and at night this prohibition was lifted. And in this prohibition as well, we act as guardian, as supervisor on our own self. We know whether we are not drinking and taking food. Temptation might be there, but since we want to go for a higher goal of life of self-development, that is why we put a discipline on our own self. It's a change in psyche. Valuables and wealth in terms of their appearance and form are the same with everyone. The difference is that there is a restriction imposed from the direction of Allah on illegitimate wealth. And that is another important point in relation to this Siyam, and this is called rizq-e-haram. And that restriction is not placed on legitimate wealth, which is called rizq-e-halal. Will this thing not be terrible that the bread that is during fasting on which there is a restriction, you do not consume it, but the wealth on which there is a restriction, you just devour it. This is not the way of a mu'min. So Quran is reminding us in this verse that after the program of Siyam, this ability should develop in you, that you should be able to recognize the weaknesses in your society. He guards every restriction placed from the direction of Allah equally. One purpose of the program of Siyam is also this. We go to the next verse, 189, emphasis placed on Birr and Taqwa again. If we remember, this aspect was covered under verse 177 in some detail. Yasalunaka anil ahillate qul hiya mawaqitu linnasi wal hajj walaysal birru bi an ta'atul buyuta min zuhuriha walakinnal birra man ittaqa wa atul buyuta min abwabiha wattaqullaha la'allakum tuflihun. We have stated above that the program of Siyam is for the month of Ramadan. From this, the thought arose in the hearts of these people that some months are blessed and some are cursed. And this is the state we find ourselves under sectarian Islam, where Ramadan is considered a very blessed month. And Quran says it has nothing to do with this kind of blessing. It is just a month. Hence, O Rasul, they have asked you about this. Say to them that the belief about months or days being blessed or cursed is mere superstitiousness, and this affects human psyche. This reality is nothing other than that timings are ascertained from this. Its benefits are obvious. Similarly, it will become known when Hajj will take place. So time is there to carry out the program of Allah. Time in itself has no significance. It depends how we utilize that time. Say to them clearly that superstition has no place in Deen. For example, this belief you have that during Hajj you should enter houses by the back door, not the front door. This is mere superstition, and we find a list of superstitions under sectarian Islam and under the domain of all religions. The paths of felicity and expansiveness, which Quran calls as birr, are not associated with these kinds of superstitious customs. And these superstitious customs and belief in them very badly affect human psyche and, of course, their conduct in the outer world. There is only one path of expansiveness, and that is to what extent you obey the law of Allah. See how Quran makes our life so easy, very straightforward, by taking out all nonsense from our life and providing clear instructions for our life's day-to-day business. And how much loftiness of character becomes created in you. And this character, we can feel it. We can feel the change, because through this character, then our outer behavior also changes. Hence, abandon these tales of ignorance, and the way in which you enter the doors of your houses on other days, enter in the same way during the days of Hajj. Obey the law of Allah, and that is the bottom line. And live your life normally. This is the technique for success. And we know that Quran wants us to live a life totally free from all kinds of fear and griefs. Some elaboration on this verse. The meaning of halal is to raise the voice. Since among Arabs, the beginning of the month used to be the first day of the new moon, hence whichever person sighted the moon, he will inform the people in a very loud voice. From this, the new moon started to be called Hilal. A nation residing in the desert like the Arabs, where there was no arrangement for keeping count, the count of months and days could only be done through the moon, because moon appears in the sky in various stages, in various shapes. Hence, among them there were lunar months and a lunar year. But the Quran stated that there is no specificity of the moon for the calculation of months and year. Solar and lunar, both kinds of years can be used. And Quran says sun and moon both are orbiting according to a set precision and rule. Hence, both can be used for counting days. If there is no particular reason for counting, for example, calendar and almanac, then counting using the moon is easy, because it has set stages, increase and decrease in appearance, which can facilitate in counting. On the other hand, counting can also be carried out through the alternation of the night and day, and it is obvious that the alternation of night and day occurs due to the sun. According to the Quran, a calendar can be solar as well as lunar. Like the Arabs who were Bedouin, it was easier for them to have a lunar calendar. Among us, it is still easier in villages to keep dates according to lunar counting. But in the case of agriculture, there is one difficulty which is faced. The program of agriculture is attached to the change in seasons, and the alteration in seasons is according to the change in the sun, not according to the moon. The month of Ramadan sometimes appears in winter, sometimes in summer. I've left it there. There is a lot more covered in volume 3. Next issue, the beliefs based on superstition. Superstition is the creation of ignorance. It exists both in those people who do not relate to any established religion, for example, the illiterate and uncivilized tribes of Africa, and also in those people who are connected to any religion, like us, the Muslims of today. Islam is Deen based on knowledge and vision. The Quran states about each of its commands, why it is being declared like this, and what will be its outcome. It removes every kind of ignorance and erases superstition. And this is extremely important for those people, that is Mu'mineen, who wish to establish the system of Deen to be totally free from all kinds of superstitions, and gradually get rid of them and see the life, human life, the way Quran wants us to look at our own life through our own self-development. Remember, ignorance and Deen cannot stay together in one place. During the era of ignorance, this was the custom among Arabs that during Hajj, if they had to return home for some need, then they did not enter from the front door. If there was a door at the back of the house, they used to enter via this, or used to climb over the wall. These very Arabs, when they accepted Islam, they were told to abandon this ancient superstition, and I'm sure there must be many more. The path to righteousness is not connected to these kind of superstitions. Righteousness is this, how much you observe the laws of Allah, and this is that very procedure through which human efforts bear fruition. Earlier, these very words were used, وَلَيْسَ Birr in under verse 177 were stated to refute this belief that by mechanically performing the commands of Deen, Sawab is acquired. This is the declaration of the Quran that just as the customs of the era of ignorance are superstitions, in the same way, when Deen changes into madhab, that is religion, then its rituals and sermons adopt the form of superstition. We go to the next verse, 190, fighting in self-defense as per the law of Allah. وَقَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ الَّذِينَ يُقَاتِلُونَكُمْ وَلَا تَعْتَدُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُعْتَدِينَ. Although in some months it is not permitted to fight, this does not mean that in the rest of the months you can initiate war with whoever you wish. War and peace will not be according to your personal priorities and self-interests. And we can see, according to the self-interests of nations, what is happening in different parts of the world of today. It will also be according to the law of Allah. So Allah has taken it out of human hands, and those human beings who work on behalf of Allah, now here this education and training is being provided through these verses. In this regard, the foremost and fundamental principle is that you should only fight those who resort to fighting against you. And this is the bottom line. And thus no other option remains for you other than to fight back. So it is in self-defense. This war will be in the path of Allah, i.e., for the sake of the security of mankind. And in this too, you will never go beyond the confines of the law. Transgression of the limits is a highly unacceptable matter according to the law of Allah. Next slide, explaining basis for fighting, which Quran calls as qital. The system of life according to the Quran is that 1. Employ the means of life produced by every person within his potentials and abilities bestowed by Allah through his own hard work and striving, while remaining within the limits defined by Allah. Due to this, purity will become created in his persona. And this is the bottom line, that we should remain focused, that whatever we are doing in relation to the Quranic value system, is it making ourselves better or not? And we should check this development, its signs in the light of the Quran. And eminence will be produced in his character. When these kind of people form the intention to live life under a system, then due to this, such an ummah will take birth, which will establish that divine system practically, which will be a guardian of the welfare and good of universal humanity. Third point, the forces of vested interests will lay every kind of impediment in the path of the establishment of this system. Because when efforts are made by Mu'mineen to establish this system, and once it acquires some kind of a tangible form, then there is bound to be some opposition. Initially, gradually, it will become stronger and stronger. And once the system is in place, then obviously there will be some resistance from many quarters of those people who do not like this system. Confronting this resistance of theirs will be the responsibility of this ummah. In the terminology of the Quran, this is called jihad, i.e., continuous and persistent striving. The whole life of a mu'min is a practical interpretation of this life, which is called jihad. In this continuous striving, there also comes a stage when, in order to defend against these opposing forces, it becomes necessary to enter the battlefield. And again, we should keep in mind that the initiation of these invasions and attacks and assaults is by the opposing forces. And Jamaat-e-Momineen is doing it in self-defense. This is called qital, i.e. war. From this, it is clear that qital is the final destination of jihad, but at every place, jihad does not mean qital, i.e., at some places, the words jihad and qital will appear with synonymous meanings. But it is not necessary that at every point jihad will mean qital, because jihad also means striving, making an effort, making endeavors on the path of Allah. Since Islam is the name of jihad, with the ultimate destination being that of qital, i.e., persistent striving to achieve the objectives defined by the Quran, and if the need arises, than to lay down life. Hence, the whole Quran is covered with guidance and details about this. We go to the next verse, verse 191. Fighting may be required to counter fitna. وَاقْتُلُوهُمْ حَيْثُ سَقِفْتُمُوهُمْ وَأَخْرِجُوهُمْ مِنْ حَيْثُ أَخْرَجُوكُمْ وَالْفِتْنَةُ أَشَدُّ مِنَ الْقَتْلِ وَلَا تُقَاتِلُوهُمْ عِنْدَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ حَتَّى يُقَاتِلُوكُمْ فِيهِ فَإِنْ قَتَلُوكُمْ فَاقْتُلُوهُمْ كَذَلِكَ جَزَاءُ الْكَافِرِينَ. When in these circumstances you become forced into war, then confront the enemy wherever you find them, and the place from where they have turned you out, you should turn them out from there too. This is because in the human world, injustice and fasad, which is fitna, are even greater causes for destructions and devastations than war. And we can see demonstration of this across the world of today. Although take care that we have declared the Kaaba to be a place of peace. Therefore, do not conduct war with them in its vicinity. See, Quran is even in this defensive battle trying to make an exception. But then it says, but if the enemy does not refrain from fighting there either, then you should fight them also. This is because people who do not respect even these kinds of international constitutions and codes, what can be their cure other than that their attack should be responded to? So that means the system of Deen must make utmost effort to create means to defend itself. We go to next two verses, 192 and 193, further instructions on fighting. فَإِنْ انْتَهَوْا فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ وَقَاتِلُوهُمْ حَتَّى لَا تَكُونَ فِتْنَةٌ وَيَكُونَ الدِّينُ لِلَّهِ فَإِنْ انْتَهَوْا فَلَا عُدْوَانَ إِلَّا عَلَى الظَّالِمِينَ. But if they cease fighting there, then you too should stop. And this is a beautiful part of this verse, that what Quran is saying is the aim is not fighting, the aim is peace. But since it was a defensive battle which was forced on you, then you should fight back. But if the other side now wants to cease fighting and the conditions are such that the fighting can be stopped, then you should do that as well. This was the very aim of the training program of Siyam, that such an ability becomes created within you, that wherever the command is given to advance, you advance, and where you are ordered to halt, you halt, no matter how great the advantage may be seen in advancing. And if we remember, we had this war between Iran and the US during the month of Ramadan, while sectarian Muslims were fasting as well, individually across the world. Remember, if you keep on obeying the divine law in this way, it will both create the means for your protection and will also provide boundless means of nourishment. So as we go through these verses, we should keep in mind the circumstances and the environment and the conditions which are existing in world of 2026, and see to what lofty aim the Quran is asking us to come to it, and then work for or work on behalf of Allah towards the system of Deen. Nevertheless, fight them with these limits and conditions until the time that the mischief, that is fitna, which they have created, becomes eliminated. And such an atmosphere is created that there is no kind of compulsion or coercion on anyone in the matter of Deen. And this is the bottom line we should always keep in mind, that in the matter of Deen of Islam, absolutely there is no compulsion, whether it is an imposed compulsion from outside or it is from a compulsion which we put on our own self as well, thinking that I don't have any other option except to exist as a Muslim because I'm born Muslim. Whoever wishes can accept it purely for the sake of Allah. So at whatever point you observe that these people have desisted from these kinds of mischiefs, you should halt the war. And this is missing in the word, and that is why we see that how much imbalance is across the planet Earth. This is because the very aim of war is that tyrannical and rebellious forces should not be permitted to cross the limits. Hence, the one who is no longer rebellious what is the point of crushing him? See how precisely the Quran is putting forward its values and scales under which we should judge ourselves and operate effectively. The next slide is the meaning of fitna, which has appeared in verse 191 and 193. The Quran has declared this mentality and path of theirs and every corruption in the word as fitna. The basic meanings of this word are heating under fire. Of course, through this they lit fire on the planet Earth, giving chastisement. But from the point of its use, it is spoken at that time when coercion is used on someone, when someone stands to block someone else's path and removes him from the path, no matter what the method used. That is when Jamaat-e-Mumineen wishes to establish system of Deen in some part of the land on Allah's earth, then there is resistance. For example, in Surah Al-Ma'idah, Rasulullah is told, but be aware of them lest they beguile you from any of that which Allah has sent down to you. And that part of the verse says, وَأَحْذَرْهُمْ أَنْ يَفْتِنُوكَ عَنْ بَعْدِ مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْكَ. You can have a look on the rest of the verse in our own time. Take care that these people do not move you away from the path defined by Wahi. In another verse it is stated, and their purpose was to tempt you away from that which has been revealed unto you. وَإِنْ قَادُوا لَا يَفْتِنُوكَ عَنِ الَّذِي أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْكَ. In another place it is stated, to these opponents that can lead any into temptation concerning Allah, مَا أَنْتُمْ عَلَيْهِ بِفَاتِنِينَ. You cannot take someone away from Allah by temptation and inducement. You will see that in these verses the word fitna includes the meaning of tempting some away from the path of Allah, leading them away. So Quran is educating and training mu'mineen that do not be taken away, do not transgress, do not become distracted from your own path. You are on Sirat al-Mustaqim, the straight path, the correct path. Stick to it and the results will appear in your direction very soon. And this is called Saddu an Sabilillah, standing as an obstacle on the path of Allah. Next slide, fighting in the path of Allah, which is called Waqatilu Fi Sabilillah. In these, a few fundamental points come before us, i.e., resort to qatl, that is fighting in the path of Allah. Fitna is worse than qatl because this is the one which is worse than, because it leads to one war, then leads to another war, and if the wars are not stopped, then these become genocides, and genocides then result in creating a lot of fitna on the planet Earth. Keep fighting until such a time that fitna ends and there is the Deen of Allah. Fi Sabilillah is a special term of the Quran which means to fight in the path of Allah. In brief words, its meaning is for the sake of the program defined by Allah, or for the establishment of the system of Allah, for the achievement of those objectives which are defined by Allah for the Jamaat-e-Mumineen. You have seen that in these meanings, though the wording is different, the aim of all is one and the same. The word Taghut, which is opposite of fighting in the path of Allah, has appeared in opposition to this. This is also a comprehensive term. Its linguistic meaning is to exceed the limit, the one who adopts rebellion. The word Tughyani, that is flooding, is from this. As a term, it means each one of those doctrines, systems or powers which transgresses the limits and laws of Allah. And we can see this visible in all systems on the planet Earth in 2026. In connection with war, the Quran has stated that those who have Eimaan fight in the cause of Allah, and those who do kufr fight in the cause of Taghut. Mu'mineen do fight for Fi Sabilillah and Kuffar for Fi Sabil at-Taghut. There is a tussle continuing between these two from the beginning. The next slide is further comments. In this connection, it is important to understand that in these verses where there is mention of mushrikeen, kuffar, munafiqeen, the people of the book. From this is meant the opponents of the initial era of the revelation of the Quran, with whom the Muslims of the initial era had to fight a war because they resisted Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen. This does not mean non-Muslims of every era. From these verses, those principles will be established according to which in our era and every era, if need be, war will be fought against the opponents of the system of Allah. It is stated here that fight with them until such time that fitna disappears and there remains no compulsion in the Deen of Allah. The common meaning taken from this verse is that the Muslims are commanded that they should keep on fighting with non-Muslims until they accept Islam, and in this way the Deen of Allah spreads in the whole of the world. And these are not correct meanings, as it will become clear. This whole terrifying picture about Islam and Muslims is created by the wrong tafsir, that is exposition and interpretation of this verse of the Quran, that is through these translations, that you should fight with the kuffar until Islam spreads through the whole world. There is no doubt that in making this picture very frightful and disseminating it in the world by making this as scary as possible, the propaganda of Europe's prejudiced historians, thinkers, and leaders of the church have a big role. But its color and life is provided by the tafasir, that is expositions and history among us ourselves. That is, the Muslims themselves have written down these things because they never understood what it means to have compulsion in Deen. And its basis is on the erroneous tafasir of this and other similar verses, and on our fictional history, which is veiled with the cover of Islam and is invented by these antagonists of Islam. Because the Quran has said that Deen simply cannot come unless your heart and mind accept its value system. If you're not fed up with the man-made system, then there's no possibility to accept Islam. And this is very clear, for example, from verse 256. And we can see from these verses as well, the fighting is only to be resorted once Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen has been formed and they have got power in some land, and then there is an opposition faced by them, and then they have to fight a battle in defense. We could have presented numerous examples in this connection from the tafasir and books of history of our predecessors. And this is because all these people who compiled these tafasir expositions and did translations, they themselves did not understand what it means to accept Eimaan of Allah of the Quran. This aspect has been covered in the meanings of the Quran, volume 3. The bottom line is that there is no compulsion in Deen, and the Islam of the Quran simply cannot spread through forced conversion. Because through forced conversion, no individual can accept Islam of the Quran. They cannot become mu'min. And this is the theme which runs throughout the Quran from beginning till end. The Quran has invited the whole of mankind of all eras to reflect on its guidance based on rational thinking and reasoning, and only then accept it through choice without any duress whatsoever. Next verse, 194, creating conditions for peace during fighting. And Quran says, Ash-shahrul haramu bish-shahril harami wal hurumatu qisasun famanetada alaykum fatadu alayhi bimithli matada alaykum wattaqullaha wa alamu annallaha ma'al muttaqeen. See how frequently this term taqwa is used in the Quran, which refers to the conduct of mu'mineen, of a very pristine, very lofty conduct. If the war is not continued uninterrupted, instead a break occurs in it, then the possibilities for agreement and peace can be ignited. For this purpose, it is essential that some such months in a year are kept during which fighting is halted in respect of them. But war is between two opposing parties. Hence, this suspension is only possible in that situation when both parties respect this agreement. Such matters are only possible in mutual give and take. Therefore, if the other party does not honor it and resorts to injustice, then you too should deal with them in the same way that they treat you. I.e., confront this, do not keep sitting with hands idle in your lap doing nothing in the name of sanctity. But in all these matters, always observe the divine laws and remember this reality that the support and aid of the law of Allah is only with those who observe these limits. Next slide, further elaboration of this verse. According to the Quran, there are 4 months left in a year in which war is declared to be prohibited. These are called the months of Harmat. But it is obvious that the war is between two parties, thus these kind of conditions cannot be unidirectional. This is settled through an agreement between the warring parties and can remain in place while both parties adhere to it. And we can see these memorandum of understanding, the discussions on which are taking place between Iran and the US, how these are proceeding, that one party is not at all interested in making any agreement. If one party goes against it, then the other party automatically becomes free from it. Have you noticed from this verse how much the Quran emphasizes compliance of international agreements which have to be observed by this ummah, that is the nation? In war, human emotions are very high. If the war is postponed for some reason, then the intensity of emotions is decreased and man becomes unable to reflect with a relatively cooler heart. For this aim, the Quran put forward this general international law that 4 months in a year should be designated in which war should not be permitted. Presently, there are no 4 months designated anywhere, and obviously these have to be decided mutually by nations of the world. These are called the months of Harmat. This kind of scheme to stop war will not be found in the code of any nation. The verse concludes by stating, وَاتَّقُوا wa وَآلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَ الْمُتَّقِينَ. Be fearful, that is, be fearful of the consequences of going against the laws of Allah, because then there will be a lot of bloodshed. Take full cognizance of going against the laws of Allah and acquire full knowledge about their functioning in your collective system, and reach that level of comprehension where you become fully convinced that Allah's laws help those who have acquired taqwa, that is mu'mineen, i.e. become muttaqeen through acquiring birr. So Quran is asking a lot from us before expecting anything in return in terms of getting power in the land. Verse 195, the last one of today's presentation, keeping resources available for fighting. Anfiqu fi sabilillah wa la tulqu bi aydikum ila tahlukati wa asinu innallaha yuhibbul muhsinin. For the establishment of the system of Haqq and to confront the rebellious forces, it is also necessary that you should make your possessions and wealth freely available to spend for this aim. And we know that the Quran repeatedly puts emphasis on that because this is part of our self-development. This actually becomes a sign of a developed self, that it offers its own services, every kind which it can spare towards the system of Deen. If you do not do this, then you will place yourselves into annihilation through your own hands. Because life is a one-way street, it will end with physical death, and we will not have any more chance to come back to this life. And Quran is repeatedly drawing our attention that you should reach that stage of khulqun azim, and it is placed within your own reach, because if the Messenger of Allah could reach that state of development, you too can. In short, you should remain busily striving and toiling in every department of life with masterful craftsmanship and artistic elegance. So that means the intellectual side is also to be offered, so that whatever mu'mineen have, they make it available according to the need of the system of Deen and its establishment. Wherever there is the need for assets in defense of the permanent values, make this available. Wherever you are faced with the need to lay down life, offer it unhesitatingly. It is this modus operandi which meets the divine criterion, and it is through this that the beauty of humanity shines forth. Next slide, making resources readily available individual to collective. That is, we learn individually and then come together collectively and then put our efforts together in every way voluntarily and willingly so that our self develops to that level of becoming muttaqi towards which Allah's laws then extend their help. After highlighting many aspects of muttaqeen, as was noted in verse 177, and with Deen in place, the Quran has reminded the Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen to make their possessions and wealth openly available in the cause of Allah. The point to note for our profound reflection is وَلَا تُلْقُوا بِأَيْدِكُمْ إِلَى التَّهْلُكَاتِ, and make not your own hands contribute to destruction. Because when fitna comes, for example, if there is, at present we don't have system of Deen anywhere, and if efforts are being made towards seeking power from Allah according to His law, then if we keep our resources not available for that, that means we are not fully convinced. And as and when the trouble comes from any direction, then we will not get any protection from Allah's law. And we will come across these kind of verses later on as we progress through this education and training sessions. From the beginning of the Quran to almost the end of it, Allah has invited us to not ignore the aspect of self-development. This is where we are repeatedly asked to concentrate our full attention, and Allah has put forward a program from initially individual striving to collectively coalescing together to form a Jamaat, which He addresses as Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, i.e., they become deserving of being addressed like this by Allah. So it's individual constituents, how strong they are of this Jamaat, those decide the strength of that Jamaat, because individual mu'mineen, individuals then come together and form a very strong bond. And Quran has referred to it, for example, in verse 103 of Surah Al-Imran. For this system of Deen, the Quran invites its followers to strive to grow out of the natural proclivity towards wealth and biological affinities and rise above their physical self while taking care of it. It's not Quran is saying that do not take care of your biological side or your physical side, but Quran is asking us to create a balance and give your self-development as a priority as directed by the Quran. To direct their gazes towards the attractions implicit in the companionship of Allah, as noted, for example, in verses 62 to 63 of Surah Yunus, Allah inna awliyallahi la khawfun alayhim wa lahum yahzanun. And who are these companions of Allah? Allazina amanu wa kanu yattaqun, who accept Eimaan and then become muttaqi. So this is something which we should keep in mind. Making wealth available in the cause of Allah is a strong, tangible sign of a developed self after having accepted Eimaan, and I have highlighted it. Thanks for your time and for sharing this today. Please feel free to share it with your contacts. You may like to subscribe for future talks related to the Quranic system of Deen.